ship Titanic began to reel and rock. People on board began to cry, saying, "My Lord, I'm bound to die." It was sad when the great ship went down. Oh, it was sad, it was sad. It was sad when the great ship went down. Husbands and wives, the girl children lost their lives. It was sad when that great ship went down.
Good evening, ladies. Good evening, gentlemen. If you wouldn't mind, please step this way. Ladies, mind your step. Gentlemen, watch your heads, please. Mind your step. Come right this way. Right this way. Ladies, mind your step. Enjoy. Watch your head. Never find you front side.
About the Titanic.
Prior to her marriage to Walter Clark, Virginia McDowell visited her Santa Rosa relatives on many occasions, meeting many of the local townspeople. Once she married, Virginia enjoyed a life of wealth and comfort. She and her husband traveled to the United States aboard the newest, largest, most spectacular, and unsinkable cruise ship, the Titanic. After the sinking, Virginia traveled to Santa Rosa to recuperate from her ordeal. Join us as we eavesdrop on Santa Rosa's one and only link to the Titanic sinking, Virginia McDowell Clark. The time is spring 1912.
Oh, that poor dear. Imagine what she's been through.
Oh, yes, Laura, but I would have been more impressed if she had set aside her high society manners long enough to at least have said hello.
I know.
But Gladys, she's still grieving. She lost her husband and she almost died herself.
Very true, Edith.
True.
Oh my, look at the crowd that's gathered.
Oh, you folks may have a long wait. Mrs. Clark's family is keeping a close guard.
We've already been told absolutely no visitors. Doctor's orders.
I heard she was on a lifeboat with Mrs. John Jacob Astor, one of the wealthiest people on board.
Well, I heard she already has a new beau, and they intend to be married just as soon as her late husband's affairs have been laid to rest, so to speak.
Well, I heard she's hardly even seen her little boy since she got back. Imagine. This lad is just 2 years old. He lost his father, and now his mother can't even be bothered.
Those dreadful women gone? Yes, dear, they are.
Oh,
I think she's coming.
I
Do
want
you
to
suppose
see what
she's
she
feeling
has to
bad?
say. I think so.
Those women remember you from when you visited here when you were younger.
Nina's right, dear. They just want to wish you well.
I wish they'd all go away. Everywhere I go, they're pestering me for my story, even when I come here to Little Santa Rosa.
Well, perhaps if you just told us.
It might help you to feel unburdened.
Virginia, we hear your nightmares. All right, then I never want to speak of it again. It was Sunday, 11:40 p.m. I was just climbing into bed when I felt a jolt. Did we collide with another ship? I climbed up onto my back and looked out the porthole to see a perfectly white background. Something was wrong. I had to get to Walter. He was playing cards.
You entered the men's lounge?
I stood in the doorway until I could finally get his attention, but Walter was saying there was nothing to worry about. The Titanic was unsinkable.
And how did you get off?
Well, we heard the cries for the women and children, but Walter said, why trade the bright decks of the Titanic for a few dark hours in a rowboat? I felt safer with my husband. We wandered for 2 hours and it was still total chaos. People were screaming to go different directions and the boat was starting to tilt, and we finally ended up on the first promenade deck. The men pushed the deck chairs up against the window so we could climb out and into the lifeboats. Walter stayed behind with the other men. He waved goodbye to me while the boat dropped us 15 feet to the sea below. I know now it was 1:55 a.m. That was the last time I saw him. We were 40 in a lifeboat built for 65. We rowed and rescued some of the men from the sea. Oh, if only Walter had jumped. If only we could have found him.
Virginia, you had no other choice. Walter would want you to live.
We sat in the lifeboat like stone figures. The boat roared and took its final plunge. And then the noise. Like a huge swarm of bees. Cries more terrible than I'd ever heard. And then the silence. As if the devastation had silenced all human emotion. It was dark and cold. And there were pieces of furniture and ice floating all around us. And people. 2 of the men we had pulled aboard died. Oh, there were so many shooting stars.
That it's true. The legend. When someone dies, there's always a shooting star.
Toward dawn, we saw the Carpathia approaching. But we were so weak we couldn't signal or cry out or even wave at them. They had already rescued a few of the lifeboats and they were starting to leave.
No.
So the story in the newspapers, is it true? About the dog rescuing?
I don't know. I was too numb to pay attention.
What's this about a dog?
Oh, they say it swam about the sea for about 3 hours. Its barking alerted the captain of the Carpathia, who then noticed Virginia's lifeboat. Otherwise, well, you can imagine.
How could a dog survive in freezing water? They say that the people died within 2 or 3 minutes of hypothermia.
Oh, well, this was a Newfoundland, bred for the harshness of the North Atlantic. Webbed feet, a rudder-like tail, and a water-resistant coat that makes it a natural swimmer, like the polar bear.
I only had my nightdress under my fur.
Is that her?
Virginia.
She's at the window.
Let's get closer.
The women were in ball gowns. Some of them were in night clothes. Very full of them were fully dressed. Once aboard the Carpathia, they were wandering around the deck screaming their men's names. Some of them were collapsed on the decks crying. I just stayed on the library. I was too exhausted. Oh, and Isabel, was I right to leave Walter? Should I have left the boat? People keep asking me what I think. I just don't know. I wish everyone would just leave me alone. Ah!
Edward, do something.
Folks, I know you're curious about Mrs. Clark, but as you're aware, she has endured a horrendous ordeal, and she's quite distraught by your presence here. I want you to leave. Go home. And you, go about your business. If there's anything else you need to know, I'm sure you'll read about it in the Press Democrat. And actually, if you'd like to subscribe tonight, you'll be entered for a free cruise.
We each deal with tragedy in our own way. After the Titanic, Virginia recovered her health enough to remarry 5 months later. She and her new husband departed for France, leaving her young son behind in the care of his nurse. Walter's father filed a petition in Superior Court and was granted temporary guardianship. A nasty custody case was eventually resolved when Virginia and her father-in-law agreed to share custody. 705 people survived the Titanic sinking, and about 1,500 died. Virginia's great-aunt, Isabella Shearer, died in October 1913 and is buried here. The price of Virginia and Walter's first-class ticket on the Titanic, in today's dollars, almost $60,000.